Coming up this week on the Markcast, it is our Law and Order meets alt football edition of the show. The real USFL is suing the new USFL. As opposed to just pontificating and doing Google researches, I decided to talk to some experts to see what they have to say. General thoughts on USFL so far? What do you think about it?
What we know of it seems like they're doing a lot of things right. I say that as they're, being hauled into court for the legitimacy of their very name and team brand. So maybe I shouldn't go too far down that path.
I talked with Ben Fischer of the Sports Business Journal all about this. Ben was the journalist that broke the story about the USFL lawsuit. Really interested to get Ben's thoughts on that and kind of the ramifications he thinks moving forward. I also bring back friend of the show, Trademark and IP lawyer Michael Cohen out of Beverly Hills to really dive into the legitimacy of this lawsuit. We're going to get Michael's thoughts.
Right now, it's a power struggle in regards to the true ownership of the trademark rights. Is it going to be this entity in which they're calling themselves the real USFL, or is it going to be the Fox camp?
And then I also got CFL talk. We got Richie Leone, longtime fan favorite of the Ottawa REDBLACKS and America's team, the BC Lions, is coming on the show.
Canada is a long-term a better play because you can make a great career up here. You can be a part of something. There's a lot of history, and I love that part about the CFL.
Big time show this week. Lots of research, lots of energy, scheduling everything, working through everything. If you guys like and enjoy, please share the video, like and subscribe, retweet, and have a good day. Thanks again. Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Reid here. Just wanted to pop on and kind of fill you in on everything that's coming up today. A big show, big USFL. We're talking the lawsuits. We have our big Law and Order meets alt football. Wanted to fill you in, and then I have a little bit of a rant before we're going to get into the news and interviews and stuff tonight. Please like and subscribe if you're a USFL fan, if you're an XFL fan, CFL fan. We have crossed 1,800 subscribers. We are working towards our goal of 2,000 subscribers before the USFL kickoff in April. Big giveaway. Remember, we have our Royal Retros jersey we're giving away. We have the AAF Commanders jersey, a bunch of Grey Cup merchandise. I'll see whatever stuff I can put together. But big giveaway at 2,000. Please like and subscribe. Lots of work, interviews, research going into this, diving into the trademarks of the USFL, kind of all that stuff. Coming up on the show today, we are talking to the experts. We could pontificate, in message boards and on Twitter and on other things, but I want to bring in the experts to kind of figure out what is going on with this USFL debacle, the lawsuit, the real USFL comprised of the original USFL owners suing the new USFL with, Brian Woods and Fox and kind of all of them involved. We're going to be talking with Ben Fischer of the Sports Business Journal. I had Ben scheduled. Farhan was going to come on this week to talk, XFL, MFL, and USFL, kind of like Dave Naylor did last week. Farhan ended up having to travel to the Combine. So I thought, well, this would be a good opportunity to get Ben Fischer on. Maybe, we could figure out some USFL stuff to talk about. Lo and behold, about 5-6 hours later, Ben broke the news of the USFL lawsuit, the real against the new. So we talked with Ben, get Ben's thoughts on the USFL kind of in general. What does he make of the lawsuit? Ben covers a lot of different sports business stuff, various football leagues. So Ben's a really good person, kind of get his perspective on that, right? Does the lawsuit hold any merit? Is this season in danger of, kicking off? Kind of all that stuff. Ben also has some thoughts on the XFL, NFL partnership as well. Curious to get Ben's thoughts as someone that's followed, both the NFL and XFL and all that stuff. Then Michael Cohen, Beverly Hills IP and trademark lawyer, is coming back on the show. Michael Cohen was on with Paul and I back earlier this summer when we had talked with Steve Ehrhart, and we also talked with Kyle Smith of the USFL Project, all when the USFL relaunch, which I guess it's not really a relaunch, but when that was all originally announced. So we talked with Michael. We kind of dove into the trademark stuff back then. It seemed a little murky when we talked with Michael back then about the trademarks and all that stuff. So I want to bring on Michael today. I have not talked to Michael yet. I do not know Michael's opinion about the trademarks. That's going to lead to my rant here in a second. I want to know Michael's thoughts. Michael's an expert. I want to know, does this case have any legs? What does he think? I have not spoken to Michael as recording this intro, so I will be very curious, as I'm sure you are, to see what Michael has to say. Finally, we're going to do a little CFL news. I have a little USFL news I want to talk about. And then we have Richie Leone from the Ottawa REDBLACKS coming on. Richie's great, good face for the league, good someone, to talk about the positivities involved with the CFL, playing in Ottawa, kind of their whole rebuild. Really excited to talk with Richie as well. So we have Ben Fischer, Michael Cohen, and then Richie Leone coming on. I'll have all that stuff time coded, and it should be a really good show. Hey guys, Future Reid here. I know I had previously advertised USFL Generals quarterback Ben Holmes for being on the show today. I was corresponding with Ben today. Ben got done with practice. I don't know if Ben got abducted by aliens. I hope Ben is okay. I will correspond with him in the future and work to get him on a future episode of the podcast. Thanks. I had a little rant in my heart today, working through everything, getting ready for the show. And I just kind of wanted to touch base with you guys and let you know where I'm coming at with all this USFL stuff. I've seen a lot of, things being made about well, if you buy into this USFL lawsuit, you're a hater or you're not wanting the league to succeed or, we're trying to cancel the USFL, whatever. In the time that I've done the podcast, 82 episodes now, I have been called an XFL hater. I have been called a CFL hater. I have been called a USFL hater, fan control football hater, kind of whatever you want to put. As a content creator that spends lots of time and money, talking about these leagues, I don't want any of them to fail. The best thing for me and someone that podcasts about these things every week is to have the most successful leagues we possibly can. That gives me the most eyeballs of people that are interested in these leagues. We have more players and coaches and staff to talk about, with these leagues. There's not an ounce of me in any way that wants the USFL to fail or that the XFL is going to succeed. I mean, I need content to talk about all year. If the USFL playing April, May, June, XFL playing February, March, April, and the CFL and everything else, that's just a better world for Reid. I have spent thousands of dollars going to Canada, dragging Dorothy wonderfully along with me to cover the Grey Cup. I'm paying hundreds of dollars and hijacking part of Dorothy's spring break trip to go to USFL or to go to Birmingham to cover the USFL kickoff. I'm invested in all these leagues. So I just wanted to clarify that. I'm not bringing on Michael or anybody tonight to, say, yes, the USFL is failing or they're not going the way. I want to talk to the experts. I want to hear what they think, but kind of sweeping this stuff under the rug and being like, well, the USFL thing, this is nonsense. We don't need to pay attention to that because that doesn't fit the narrative of the platform you're on. I don't buy that either. I want to talk to experts. I want to keep you guys informed about what is going on. That is my goal here. And obviously I have thoughts if the XFL is doing things better or the USFL. I mean, we're all going to have personalities and opinions, but ultimately at the end of the day, more successful alternative football leagues is better for me. That's all I want. And I want success for everybody involved. And, but this is fascinating. This is fascinating to see what's going to happen. I think this is a wrinkle that, I guess we saw coming 6 months ago, but, no one else did with this USFL lawsuit. So it should be a good show. So thanks as always, for putting up with me and my rant today. I hope you enjoy the show. I will check in a little bit with some other news updates. Thanks. We have Ben Fischer here with the Sports Business Show. Ben, remember when we kind of set this up this week? We thought, well, maybe we'll have some USFL stuff to talk about. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me. And you're right. The pace of news is picking up, whether the USFL meant to or not this week with that lawsuit. It's timely, and it's one of the key questions we've got for this league, for sure.
I would rather be lucky than good sometimes. And I was very happy. I had to work on Monday. I was very happy to schedule your interview and then come out of my gig and see, oh, Ben has this big story about the USFL lawsuit. So it certainly worked out timing. Before we get into all that, and obviously we're going to have Michael Cohen on as well, doing the trademark stuff. General thoughts on USFL so far. What do you think about it?
Well, I think what we know of it seems like they're doing a lot of things right. I mean, I say that as they're, being hauled into court for the legitimacy of their very name and team brand. So maybe I shouldn't go too far down that path. But, it seems like they've really watched and learned from other people's mistakes, and that they are going with sort of a minimum viable product. I think one of the things that was so exciting about the XFL when it launched under Vince McMahon in 2020 was that, we had known the team names and some of the people who were in charge of the teams for many, many months in advance. They had a lot of money in marketing and social media content. And, they did a lot of things to look very professional up front. I think that was exciting and sort of helped generate buzz, but those people cost a lot of money, and it was a big payroll, and it was a very heavy organization from the start. And I think the people behind the USFL at Fox know that cost minimization is maybe the single biggest challenge to spring leagues. It's not so much when are we going to be profitable, but it's how can we limit our losses while putting a product out. And I think various things that Fox Sports has done is really designed to get football games onto TV while spending as little money as possible, at least in the short term, which seems to make a lot of sense, because that's where prior iterations have failed in spring football for sure. So they've got my attention. I'm watching them very closely, in part because of that, but also it's Fox. It's not individual. It's not different. It's not an entrepreneur who's got investors he's got to pay back on a date certain. Fox could conceivably lose money for a long time on this if they like the ratings that the USFL is doing for them. So we've seen so many spring leagues come and go, but Fox doing it in sort of a different way, owning it entirely, presents some new opportunities and wrinkles to the storyline that makes this not just one more certain to fail spring league, I think.
But also, Fox owning it, they could very much say, like, we're done with this. We're ready to move on. Just as easy where they don't have contracts in place, right, with if you had a bunch of people you had brought together, right?
Right, exactly. And that's the upside and the downside of not being an entrepreneur who's bet their life on this. They don't have to make money. They also have got 20 other things they could suddenly decide to get moving on one day. Eric Shanks, the head of Fox Sports, decided that this was something he wanted to put a priority on. Things change. His bosses might think differently. It's hard to say what might even change in the near future. But, there's a certain amount of easy come, easy go there. As much as I think they really are invested in this, just as we saw Vince McMahon was invested in the XFL until he decided that it wasn't a good idea for him to continue to pour hundreds of millions of dollars down the drain. So that's the upside and the downside.
It's interesting. You talk, XFL very heavy leading up, right? Because there has been a lot of criticism, right? Okay, the USFL, we don't know a lot, right? And then it really did seem like after the Super Bowl, they thought, okay, now, we're getting uniforms out, we're getting drafts, we're getting all this stuff. But now, in a week, presumably, where we would be getting, I don't know, maybe a TV schedule or other things, now we have this lawsuit kind of taking the forefront, right? I would imagine that Fox and the USFL would be announcing other things this week were it not for that going on.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess it's possible. I shouldn't say it's not. I'm not aware of anything else that they were doing this week that they're not doing because of the lawsuit. I think they would like us to downplay the lawsuit. So maybe it's the exact opposite. Maybe they're trying to find something that they can talk about that's not the lawsuit. Excuse me. It has been notable how little we've known about this. And it's all a little bit unusual to have football less than, 6 or 7 weeks away and not even really know who the teams are or exactly who all these people are. There's still lots of unanswered questions. I can only assume that's a strategy by Fox and the USFL to kind of try to, don't make too many promises. It's almost reminiscent of like me with deadlines and stories. I can't literally surprise editors, but I try to give them an intact product rather than dribbling out week after week, say, but this is what it's going to be, because then I've created expectations. So it's almost like Fox is guaranteeing themselves maximum flexibility by not talking about it a lot, which is frustrating for people like me and you, because we're trying to ascertain the validity of this product, but we don't know much about it yet. So it's weird.
It's weird. That was what we had always heard the spring league last year, right? Is they really wanted to just kind of see what the league did on its own, right? Didn't want to put a lot of marketing behind it, didn't want to put the time, and then use it kind of as a proof of concept. Well, now you have this league, you have this big deal, and I mean, like I said, we still don't know the TV schedule here, except for the kickoff game, and then okay, we're playing in Canton, for the playoffs. Do you think that that's odd that March 2nd now we still don't have a TV schedule?
It's certainly not how traditional sports league marketing would lay it out. You want to give people time to buy tickets. You want to give your sales and promotional teams time to promote it. But I think it's an illustration of how Fox is really doing this so differently. I think they are going to sell tickets to the games as more of a community fun thing and bring it. It's $10 a ticket. Surely they could charge more, but that's not a priority for them. They'd rather get people there than necessarily squeeze every dollar they can out of the market for that. I think their attitude toward television production is, hey, it's American football. It'll sell itself. As long as we tell people at least a few days out, we can we can sort of hold back maximum flexibility while also kind of, having our cake and eat it too, I think. It's very unusual that they haven't told us more about these teams, because traditionally the playbook would be to really push a pitch and build up a fever pitch. But I think they figure people will watch a certain amount of football no matter what. And as long as it's, looks decent on camera, that's all that really matters on those first games.
Obviously, football, your beat, all these things, but MLB, it can't not talk about that now, especially this week, right? Pushing things back. I mean, even if there wasn't a USFL, I mean, I think Fox and everyone else is like, what are we going to do, right, to fill this time? But thoughts on that in baseball and how that affects the spring football league here?
I hadn't really thought about it. But of course you're right. I mean, you're looking for time on the calendar. And April 16th, it's after NCAA basketball tournaments. Hockey and basketball are picking up, but normally baseball would be a major competitor for people's time in mid-April, and now it's looking like it might not be. Considering Fox's investment in Major League Baseball, I'm pretty sure Fox would prefer baseball happen. But for the handful of guys whose job is the USFL, this is a godsend for them, because people like football, and football is by far the most popular sport in the U.S., but April is not traditionally a time for football. If there's no baseball on that Saturday, then surely more people will watch this than won't if there was baseball on.
How did you come across the transition to the lawsuit here and everything that you and others reported this week? How did you come across that, and what were your initial thoughts?
We've got a service that alerts us to certain keywords when lawsuits are filed in federal court, and Fox Sports and NFL are things that come up there. So we saw that somebody was suing them. I can't say I'm surprised. We all knew that the individuals who filed this suit, the plaintiffs, raised this very objection when the USFL was first launched last year. And so honestly, I'm a little surprised it hasn't happened yet. Maybe it was intentionally held back designed to cause maximum agita and strife by doing it so close to the season starting. But they would have, to me, that doesn't make that much sense, or not enough sense, because even though, the timing here isn't great for the USFL, these men had a very real cause of action the moment the USFL put out that press release announcing the return of the league. So they would have been perfectly able to file. It's not like they had to wait for something else to happen to file that lawsuit. So it's a little curious to me that they didn't file until now. But it's no surprise. The lawsuit is basically the argument they made at the very beginning of all this. Where it goes from here, I don't know. I'm certain that Fox Sports executives and their lawyers are very confident that they will win this case. Places like Fox don't greenlight large new business initiatives without checking it in every different way from lawyers. But the law courts are inherently unpredictable. They might be 100% sure they ultimately win, but it wouldn't take much to derail this. What would take it, depending on who the judge they got. The judge could say, hey, maybe you will win this case, but we're going to talk about this. We're going to have a trial. And he might even say, you can't use these marks until we go to trial. So it's a little bit like the NFL's lawsuit they had to settle in St. Louis regarding the relocation of the LA Rams. When that lawsuit was filed, everyone involved in sports business and the NFL said, they have got no case. They can't sue for this. The NFL is going to win. And honestly, to this day, the NFL was certain that if that case had all gone all the way through, they would have won it on appeal. But the downside of a trial was so significant that the NFL agreed to pay nearly $800 million to make that case go away. So that's a situation where they were certain they were right, and those lawyers probably were right, that eventually they were going to win that case. I think Fox might be in a similar spot on this, where they're very confident they're going to win this case ultimately. They wouldn't have done it if they didn't get that legal clearance. But that doesn't mean this lawsuit isn't going to be a huge pain in their butts. So, we'll see if they can get to it, if the plaintiffs can get in front of a judge before April 16th. If they can, I'm not going to say it's likely, but one outcome of that is that the judge says, hey, while we work on this, don't do anything with these marks. He could issue an injunction, and that would be a real problem for the league. I don't think that's very likely, to be clear, but it's possible. You never know what these judges are going to think.
In your estimation, moving forward, and obviously we're going to, like I said, talk to, the IP lawyer. Yeah, how quickly do these things progress, right? I mean, time will tell, but is this something where we do actually need to worry about in April 16th, like something happening before then?
I have not checked the docket in this case recently. Actually, I can do that now.
Hey guys, Future Reid here. It was recently announced that the preliminary hearing date for the real USFL versus USFL lawsuit is going to be taking place on March 16th, exactly 1 month from the USFL kickoff in Birmingham, which is kind of interesting on April 16th. It definitely seems like they are fast tracking this based on the conversation Ben and I continue to have now about when he anticipated things would be taking place. We talk more about this later with Michael and get his thoughts on it, but I just wanted to interject here to keep the conversation up to date with the latest information. Thanks.
Short answer is I would find it very surprising that something would happen before April 16th to stop this from happening. Just because in court time, that's really fast. Yeah. You file a lawsuit at the end of March, you're probably, like the USFL and Fox will probably get at least 3 weeks to file a response. And I guess if a judge is so inclined to think that this is a matter of utmost urgency or public policy, he could accelerate that. But now that I'm thinking about it, under normal circumstances, they probably wouldn't actually have an opportunity to argue back and forth in front of a judge until mid to late April anyway. So I guess actually stopping the start of the league seems like a real outlier possibility, just because of how fast it would have to happen for that. But I think you could expect, some initial appearances in court right around the start of the season.
A lot has been made about the actual lawsuit itself, right? Like misspelling Pittsburgh, misspelling Jim Kelly, right? Legend of the USFL. They use it. I mean, you've read a lot of lawsuits, done a lot of stuff. Is that normal? Does that make you weary? Because I saw a lot of this was just hastily put together, or they don't really, they don't care.
Yeah. I would say that there have been very valid lawsuits filed by people that maybe didn't proofread well enough. That is not a dispositive argument, but it does tell us something about the credibility and the seriousness of these people. As a reporter, the entities I write about, and the NFL is sued many times a day. Those alerts I talked about, they get a little tiresome. So we are always asking ourselves, how serious is this? Is this something we need to write about right now? So some of the initial thresholds we look for is, are these lawyers well known? Have they done other things? Are these people that, are taken seriously and have a reputation within the sports business? Does the complaint look well done and well prepared? And I can't say anything good or bad about these lawyers. I don't know them. I don't need to express opinion on that. But, yeah, I mean, to answer your question, misspellings in a complaint does tell us something about their work. It doesn't mean they don't have a completely valid case under the law, but it suggests maybe there wasn't full thought put into this. The fact that this real USFL is actually a new entity, I think that's going to be a challenge, an uphill battle that, just to follow the facts of who exactly is the original USFL and how much have they been active in using these rights over time. It's a fairly convoluted story. You read the lawsuit itself, and at its core, legally speaking, it's a very straightforward argument. we have the rights to use these names. They don't. But then you start looking to, well, it hasn't really existed for 35 years, but they've used the rights in certain ways. But then this new entity comes in and tries to take it. Anyway, it just gets complicated. And it doesn't. I'm not going to say they don't have a chance, but there are some things that raise your eyebrows about this complaint. I'll put it that way.
Well, yeah, I mean, it just, especially, you're good. Especially when you're using, like, Jim Kelly, legend of our league, right? As, and we're misspelled. I mean, that was like the key point in the first page of the thing. I don't know, I want to transition to XFL here before I let you go. I mean, any final thoughts on this? I mean, obviously time will tell. They hit the field. We need to see viewership, right? We really need to see, I think that's a key here, right? I mean, what can Fox draw on a Saturday in April?
Right.
Any other thoughts on that before we transition?
Well, I think the USFL has my attention because of the things I have seen about them keeping costs down and doing it straight out of Fox, where they don't necessarily need to make a profit to pay back an investor. Their goal is to pay for some television that people will watch on Saturdays and Sundays this spring. So I would say that it's got a better shot than a lot of spring leagues just because of Fox's backing. I think it all comes down to the quality of the players in the field. I think we know that basically the difference between good football and bad football is, can your quarterback consistently hit a receiver? Can the line keep the guy, keep him upright for 3 seconds? So those are things that no matter how deep into a business analysis I get, it's hard for me to say. I don't know the depth of the player pool well enough to really predict that. But I think they put themselves in a position to succeed from the business and sort of a structural standpoint. It all comes down to how entertaining the games are or not.
From your estimation, covering these spring leagues, right? Covering these, non-NFL, obviously the rosters came out. Were there enough names that you felt like to really like strike a chord, in kind of hit the general public, right? The casual viewer, like, oh, okay, I'm going to go check that out.
Me personally, I don't always trust my judgment on this because I really am a business reporter, not a sports reporter. But I didn't recognize that many names, and I consider myself a fairly big football fan. And, I recognized, I don't know, maybe half the quarterbacks rang a bell, but overall it was much less than 50%, probably less than 10%. And I don't know if that's necessarily a problem. You need well-matched teams, not necessarily marquee players to make a good football game. And I think that's part of what Fox Sports is betting on here is that what makes or break a startup isn't necessarily famous players, but evenly matched players, and quarterbacks are good enough to keep the clock running. And I guess I don't know enough to say whether they've got that or not based on just the names in the mix.
Yeah, because obviously, like us alt football fans, we're I know that guy from, but just the general like, I'm a 40-year-old man going to go watch. Like, do they know, or mom, or who do they know these people?
Yeah, I get the impression that it's going to be a pretty short list of people who are already known in the USFL, which, I guess different people can have reasonable different opinions on how important that is or not. But they're definitely not going to go old school USFL and throw hundreds of millions of dollars at top draft picks. They don't think that's necessary, actually, to get people to watch. And Fox has pretty sophisticated analytics on why people watch football and who they are, what motivates them. And they think if it's a good game and more passes are completed than not, and the line is able to allow the quarterback and the running backs to develop a game plan, then people will watch.
Before I let you go, so you transitioning, right, in all the big USFL stuff, uniforms, drafts, all this stuff. In between all that, on President's Day, right, XFL comes out and announces, kind of a surprise, right? I don't know if anyone really expected that on a Monday, right? Holiday Monday. Thoughts on this new NFL XFL partnership?
Well, it's got my attention, but I don't think we know enough about it to say whether it means anything at all. I don't mean to say this as a criticism. The NFL is just a big operation, but it wouldn't be the first time some sort of announcement came out about the NFL, and it turned out the press release was the primary iteration of the NFL initiative. I don't think there's much meat on the bone now. I ask him, is there a guaranteed work product that's going to come from this collaboration? Is there somebody at the NFL who is in charge of this? Have either the XFL or the NFL committed a minimum amount of money toward this? And the answer to all those is sort of no. Look, this is a commitment to talk about things and to experiment. And that's great, but it's not a lot of hard substance you can take to the bank here, I think. So I'm a little bit of a skeptic on how much actually comes to bear from this XFL NFL collaboration. But it's certainly better to have that than not, because I think it does possibly work to blunt some first mover advantage from the USFL. If there are guys for the USFL who are under contract for the USFL, but would really, their goal ultimately is to play in the NFL, right? So all else being equal, it's better to play with a league that has a connection to the NFL than not. So it's important. It certainly caught my eye, but I guess let's wait to see what this NFL relationship actually means and doesn't before we try to assess its value to the XFL and the players there.
My initial, when I saw it Monday, that I guess it was last Monday now when I saw it, because we lived through all this CFL stuff and everything, and I'm sure you,
right.
And I just thought, we're more collaborative talking. That was really my first thing. I'm like, God, I get all this and I get wanting to build, but could we please put the ball on the field? Could we play a snap before it's like, oh, well, now we're going to go talk to the NFL? I get wanting to, have this 2-year-long runway and all these different things coming with it, but I really was taken aback by that. Of okay, we're talking with another league now.
Yeah. I think that's actually a good point, that it was reminiscent of the CFL thing. The CFL thing was a really intriguing headline. Oh, what would it look like if we had an international league? And, I can see that. You take sort of the well-known brand names of the CFL with the money and prestige of the Rock and Redbird Capital Partners. Maybe there's something there. But on the other hand, you immediately say, well, which version of the game are we going to play? Are guys going to be expected to move back and forth between Canadian and American football? So there were a lot of not red flags, but yellow flags, even in the best case scenario for that. The NFL thing, there's less of that. It's a spring league. In theory, it could become a developmental league for the NFL without too much changes to sort of the core framework on that. But again, the NFL isn't going to do that lightly. This is not exclusive. The NFL could enter into a similar arrangement with the USFL. So it may or may not mean much at this point. And I agree with you about just putting the ball on the field and playing. Let's just go. And I think that's ultimately why the USFL's first mover advantage here is pretty substantial. I'm not saying both can't survive. It's a new world. Everyone needs content for streaming services, and everyone likes more football to bet on. But if you think that only one is going to survive, for a guy who's maybe a 28-year-old running back and figures he's got 3 good years left, you want to play now. And I think that's a huge advantage of the USFL now compared to the XFL. No matter how well the XFL might be done, they're going to be a year behind a competitor.
It just felt weird. A lot had been made about Eric Shanks, his relationship with Goodell, right? Okay, the NFL is not going to get in the way of the USFL. Maybe they'll operate together. And then to have it come out and say, oh, well, the XFL now is going to be... it just felt weird because I'm like, well, I thought that was... It felt like that was the USFL was going to be more friendly with the NFL than the XFL.
That is a little surprising because, of course, Fox and the NFL are tied together as close as anybody anyone in business. But, the XFL's leadership has a lot of ties to the NFL, too. And I think the NFL, the NFL's perspective on this is that any organized football is good because our football ops guys, our GMs, our coaches, our scouts say that there's just not enough tape on everybody. So anybody out there who's putting more guys in uniform and running more plays is good for the NFL. And they figure as long as we're not being asked to commit any real money to it, we're happy with that, So I don't know, maybe there's been, I'm purely speculating here, but maybe they've talked to Shanks in the USFL and figured, hey, we're not going to get in your way. There'll be some sort of quiet support here, but we don't need an official relationship just because it's understood that if anybody gets real traction here, we'll come talking to them about some sort of developmental arrangement.
Well, it's really fascinating. All this compared to what we were podcasting about a year ago with new Zoa flavors and stuff. This is certainly a more exciting. Right. Anything else before I let you go, Ben? This has been a wealth of knowledge.
I don't think so. It's an exciting time to be into spring and alternative football. because I don't know if either one of them is going to succeed, but there's a good case to make for both of them. I think everyone's learned a lot of hard lessons from other people's spectacular failures and trying to do this in a more thoughtful and lean, cost-efficient way. And like I said, it's an uphill battle, but between everyone's need for content and people's love of betting on football, I think they stand a much better chance than they used to. So I'm optimistic about these, actually.
I mean, was it ESPN just paid $18 million, right, to Troy Aikman, right, to call a football game? I mean, like, clearly the drive for content and football content, especially, I mean, that, it's insane, right? Right.
It's just that, I mean, a mediocre football game does better than almost every NBA game. And so I think they're figuring if, even bad football is football. I think that's where we are as a sports country right now. And particularly with the baseball lockout that may be extending, those numbers could really pop. And then, they're off to the races.
Well, Ben, thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate your time.
Sure thing. Thanks for having me.
Well, this is exciting. We have Michael Cohen back on, IP and trademark lawyer out of Beverly Hills. Michael was on with us back this summer when we talked with Steve Ehrhart, and we had a lot of questions involving all this stuff. And now, lo and behold, this is the world we live in. Michael, how are you doing?
I'm really good. How are you?
We're good. This is we have gotten a lot more clicks on our video from back in May and June than I think we did the first time with all this stuff going on. But there was a lot of questions back then and the lineage of the trademarks and all this stuff. And basically, your work we did live on the podcast kind of has all come to fruition.
Yeah. It's the continuation of that for sure.
So what do you make of all this? Because I was asked a lot. Oh, is Michael agreeing with you? Like, does he think the league's in trouble? Or is it like, I don't care what you think, right? As long as it's educated and you're the expert in this, right? Like, I have no stake in, like, is the USFL going to close shop tomorrow or whatever? So what do you make of all this?
Well, the league as a whole isn't in trouble. I don't think so. I think it's not going to end, right? So it's just a matter of who's going to be in control of it. Now, anything can happen, obviously, and the results of filing these lawsuits could blow the whole thing up. But right now, it's a power struggle in regards to the true ownership of the trademark rights. Is it going to be this entity in which they're calling themselves the real USFL, or is it going to be the Fox camp who is going to continue on and control it?
It's odd because to me, and I think the feelings we had back when all this came out was the original owner, Steve Ehrhart, right? A lot of the group that's now has formed this real USFL LLC in the last week or two, kind of fell asleep at the wheel, right? And let these marks go away, right? It kind of abandoned them. And then, obviously they were picked up legally through other means. Is that your takeaway?
I wouldn't say that per se. So, whether he abandoned it, because there's a legal connotation to that word, abandon. So the actual trademarks, the federal filings, those registrations, yeah, you're right. Those did lapse, and they admit it in their court filings that we did let them go. But was there still some use that occurred throughout that period of time since the 80s to now? And that's what the whole lawsuit is about. That yes, of course, they're claiming that we continue to do quite a few things, apparel, license. There was a talk about a movie in which there was some kind of film that was out. So through those channels, they continued to keep the name and the trademark rights alive. And by that by that token, there was no abandonment, according to them.
I mean, is that traditionally how that works? I mean, I have my wedding company, Best Made Videos. I have that trademarked, right? And I believe, right, you have to update that every 6 years or 10 years, right, to kind of keep it maintained. Is that accurate?
So, all right, there's one thing in regards to talking about, let me just turn this off. Sorry about that. There's one thing about having an actual federal registration and keeping that alive. Okay. So when you file for a trademark, you file with the United States Patent and Trademark Office. And that's the governmental agency that issues trademarks, right? But even if you don't have that, there's still this common law concept of trademarks. So you can still have common law rights to a trademark without having a federal registration. And those two levels of law, they sometimes compete with each other. Okay, so a senior common law user can contest a later federal registrant. And that's kind of what the situation is here, that the real USFL is claiming that we're the common law users, we're the original users. Even if our federal rights lapsed, we still claim priority to the later trademarks that you guys later took over or filed new ones. So that's what the issue is. So yeah, it's always better to keep the trademark going, and having the federal registration makes it cleaner and easier. But they did let those lapse, but they're still keeping that argument that they had trademark rights from a common law standpoint.
It's fascinating. I mean, and obviously, it's just your one opinion here, right? I mean, it'll ultimately come down right to a judge to decide on this. But it is fascinating to think that, I guess the argument would be, well, no, Fox came in, they paid, they acquired these legally, right? They did all this. That's their rights now. And these guys are sour grapes trying to contest it now and maybe get a big payday or something before this league kicks off.
I mean, who knows? Who knows? It's I don't know if it's a matter of getting a payday or trying to extract some kind of settlement, but it really is to you can say it's about the legacy, because all these original trademark rights holders, and by the way, so this new I try to look up this new entity. So the plaintiff in this is called the Real USFL. It's a New York limited liability company. So before this interview, I looked them up, and it didn't pop up for some reason. The Secretary of State, maybe it's too new, or maybe I didn't.
It's very new.
Yeah, so I just couldn't find it. So I don't know how old it is or what, but from my understanding, all the original right holders from back in the 80s gave their permission to put their IP into this new entity. So, I guess the philosophical argument on their side is that we're protecting the legacy. We're the true rights holders, and these new guys on the block, Fox, they're trying to trade off the nostalgia and the goodwill that was created back then. And really, they're two different leagues or two different things, but they're just trying to capitalize on what was created back then.
It's going to be interesting because when the USFL, when you came on and everything before, a lot was made. The USFL is back, right? They had Doug Flutie that was, former player. Hey, the USFL, we're coming back. We're, the press release, all this stuff said a reboot, relaunch, whatever you want to use it. And then slowly over the last few months, they've actually gone back and edited those press releases to get rid of all of that, right? Fox has, and where it's just like the USFL, is a new spring alternative football league, whatever. What do you make of that?
Well, that's interesting. I wasn't that keen on, or didn't know about those edits as much. So looking at the legal filings at the complaint, and I'm sure you and I are going to talk about this, the new filing that happened yesterday. Looking through that, the plaintiffs are citing to statements that are still up. So I think there were some Twitter statements and statements here and there that they say, look, they haven't taken these statements down, and they're to the effect of what you just said, that we're back, that the USFL, they're back, they're coming back. It's like linking back, tagging on to what was made in the past, and so they're still making that statement, it seems like, and they're not taking that down.
Yeah, it's weird because it's this. We want to profit off the old. This is what it feels like. We want to profit off the legacy, right? We want to bring people back that are into it, but then we don't want to. We're not actually using those marks, right? We're using our own, but we're profiting off the. You know what I mean? It's a weirdly hyperbolic. It's two-sided there of how they're looking at it.
Yeah, and I think one of the arguments by the plaintiff, the real USFS, is why are you using the same names? I don't know if they're 100% using all the exact names, but I think there's like 12 or 18 new leagues that they made, but they're utilizing pretty much the same names. And so, well, why do it? Why not just make new names? And there's value to those names according to the plaintiffs. So if there was no value, why why wouldn't you, or why are you using those same names? You can make new names.
Does that weigh into, or will that weigh into a judge's decision?
Of course, yeah, that's one of the factors. So, are they trading off of the value of the trademarks from the past? So if there was no value, the argument is, well, no, there's no value. It's just a coincidence, or there's no damage to us, doing it. But if there's value associated with it, then that's an argument that the plaintiffs are going to be damaged by that.
I've gone back and forth because I read enough thinking this isn't a big deal, and I talk to you now and it feels like a big deal. Is this a big deal?
Is it a big deal? So, that's up to the judge or the jury to decide that. The parties are surely going to make it a big deal. Of course, there's a lot of, you can say it's a big deal. There's a lot of money at stake. So the fate of what's going to happen with this league is at stake right now. I mean, think about it. There's a lawsuit that's been filed. That lawsuit goes all the way to trial. There's going to be adjudication at the end unless there's a settlement. And yesterday's filing, which let's just talk about it now. So there was a preliminary injunction that was filed, so that's going to decide a lot. That has a massive ramification in regards to what's going to happen in the near term future, right? Because you have a trial date. There's no trial dates even set in this case yet, but there will be, sometime soon. And that's going to be way out in the future, like a year from now, So this preliminary injunction is going to decide within a few months or even less, maybe, what's going to happen.
Yeah, so theoretically, right, so March 16th is this injunction, right? April 16th is the kickoff. Is this something where a judge would say, you guys need to call it something else here in the meantime? Or will they let them continue, going forward with it, and then we'll decide this later on, and maybe you'll pay damages back? Yeah,
so all the above. So it can go in either direction. One is, as a result of this preliminary injunction, if it is granted, okay, meaning that the plaintiffs filed this motion to get the judge to stop Fox from doing this now, but the case still moves on. And so they can prove everything at the end, but at least they get their temporary relief now, okay? So judge could read the pleadings and the papers, the motion, and say, yeah, I agree with you, and I'm going to stop their use from proceeding on, okay? Or on March 16th, the judge can say, I need to think about it a little bit more. And so there's no adjudication, and he takes it under submission, and it might just kind of go on for a little bit, or he won't grant it, and then the case just proceeds on to normal litigation, where it goes on to the discovery phase, there's depositions, and then ultimately a trial, unless it settles before then.
Because it would be, in theory, if they just let everything continue, they said, USFL, keep going, we're going to go. Then later on, they'd say, you guys owe X amount in damages, right? Like if let's say Fox kicked off this whole season, right? And then maybe next January, we decide, okay, you guys are at fault. Would that be the alternative?
So in regards to, damages is like a different issue, right? So what this preliminary injunction is just injunctive relief to stop the infringing act. The infringing act is Fox using all these trademarks, right? So that's all that this is about for now. So in regards to assessing damages and all that kind of stuff, that is really a thing at trial, typically. I mean, it can happen a little bit before that, but normally it's at trial or settlement, where the parties just say, you know what, let's just hash it out and come to an agreement, and maybe we'll, settle it some way in which will allow Fox to carry on, but we have to be part of it, or you need to pay us, or whatever the case may be.
If you had to speculate, and I mean, all this is speculation, but if you had to, this, we knew about this in May and June, right? Is the timing of this now because we're kicking off now? I mean, is that, in your mind, is that gel? Like, why are we hearing about this, February 28th, March 1st, because the league's kicking off so soon?
Well, who knows what happened behind the scenes, right? So last time we spoke, there was a procedural mechanism in which the plaintiffs could have utilized through the USPTO to cancel all the trademarks, right? They didn't do that. So instead, they're just filing this lawsuit. So from last summer to now, who knows what they negotiated? There might have been communications back and forth. Maybe they came close to a settlement, or maybe they didn't. I don't know what the case is. Maybe they thought Fox wouldn't actually go through with it. So now it's coming to a head, and so it's either you move or you lose. So you got to file. If you don't do it timely, you're out. And that's what the preliminary injunction is. The preliminary injunction is you need immediate relief now. You can't sit around. Even a month too late, a judge could say no to a preliminary injunction if you're too late on that. So you have to move really quick, and things are moving quick. They're going to do this. It's around the corner.
Yeah, they move. It feels really quick to be scheduling this in 2 weeks from now.
Yeah.
I already see the comments on this and people in Facebook and everything, Fox bought these trademarks. They did this. We've traced back the world headquarters ownership of this back to 2011, right? Then it got passed and passed. You're really saying none of that matters as long as the original Steve Ehrhart and them theoretically continued use the whole time.
Well, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that.
Okay.
But that's the argument that the plaintiffs will make, that they have the priority of use, and in their motion, the plaintiff's motion, they talk about the dates. So this whole lawsuit is really going to come down to nailing down who had what priority and when, and for what. So maybe it's one thing to say you have priority for trademark right priority for clothing and apparel, but it's another thing for for the football league. So maybe it might get divvied up like that. Who knows? But I saw in one paragraph that the real USFL said that the defendant's rights only go back to 2019. That's the earliest that they can show. So plaintiffs can easily beat that by many, many years. So that's what a lot of these disputes are: is who had it first and when. Who has the lineage of that? Who has the right to priority?
Yeah, I do see what you're saying, where it could be divvying up. Because if I own something, I own a football league, and I just kept selling shirts for 30 years, and then does that entitle me then, no one else could ever, I don't know. I don't know what that, there's obviously you trademark, clothing and trademark, even my podcast, I have to trademark for downloadable versus streaming, right? There's various levels to that. Any indication where the law lands on this? Obviously it's up to the judge, but where are you leaning?
Well, really, it's going to be up to a jury. So there's the jury, the peers in this case, they're going to decide the jury pool. So, you can make a distinction between, you gave an example of your business, but compared to this, but they're different set of facts, right? So it's not as black and white in regards to, even though I'm not using that one particular category that I filed for in the trademark, I'm doing something else, so therefore I'm out. No. So, the plaintiffs are claiming a variety of things. So not just apparel, but, movie rights, okay, books, and licensing. So they're claiming that they're the master licensors to the name. And that's a steady stream of revenue for them. And that's been continuing on. And they have many vendors, or at least a handful of vendors, that purchase their products. And so it's not just one of the products, but what they're going to argue is that it's the entire goodwill of the name, of the USFL. So you can't parse that out to a completely new entity that's coming. That's what they're going to argue. Okay. I don't want to sound like I'm so pro USFL. So, I know dog in this fight either way, but that's for sure what they're arguing, and I've read it so far. So the only thing I've read is what's only out there, which is the complaint and the preliminary injunction. So the defendants, they have yet to speak, at least in a court. So let's see what they're going to say. So they're going to do an opposition to the preliminary injunction pretty soon, and we're going to hear from them.
So even though there's nothing in the record, we had a statement come out, from the lawyer, right, from David Bernstein, Fox counsel. You're saying that, that press stuff, that doesn't necessarily matter. It needs to be in the court of law in terms of actual response.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's just a matter of, public opinion type of statement. So like anything else, if there's a high profile, newsworthy type of issue, whether it's something like this or, a criminal act or something like that, the attorneys will come out, the representatives will come out, maybe do a brief press statement. So, that's all that was. So their legal statement will come out relatively soon. It's going to be in the form of an opposition to the motion for preliminary injunction, and that opposition is going to be filed really soon. I think they have a few weeks or so before that's going to be filed, or even less than that.
You have to imagine in the argument, Fox wouldn't have done this if they did not feel good, right? In, the track record in terms of like the acquisition of everything, right? I mean, you would have to, this isn't like I'm Reid, I'm starting the football league here. I mean, this is Fox Sports, Fox Broadcasting doing this. I mean, would you argue that they have gone forward with this as far as they did because they feel good about their case in terms of the legal ownership of everything? I mean, they had to anticipate this.
Yeah, of course. I mean, to file a lawsuit, you always have to do your due diligence, and you have to state, as attorneys that you've reviewed everything and you're signing your name to the legal pleadings and attesting that everything is to the best of your knowledge and accurate. And so, they have merit. Sure. It seems like it, in the complaint, they have a basis. And, so now it's just a matter of dissecting it all, and then dissecting the law as well in regards to, well, how strong is that prior claim? Is it strong enough to invalidate? Plaintiffs are also asking for invalidity of these later trademarks that were filed by the defendants as well. So there's going to be a lot of defenses that the defendants are going to have. One could be maybe latches. What took you so long? Why are you doing this now? You've had these trademarks for a little while, and you're doing this now at the last minute, right before we launch, and you're going to disrupt everything. So you could have done this a year ago or so. I think both sides have. It's not going to be an easy one to parse through for the court. So it's definitely not a black and white issue.
A couple last ones here. I don't want to hold you too long. A lot's been made that this LLC was recently formed, right? It was formed in case they got like a slap or whatever, right? Where it's like a needless lawsuit, right? And maybe they owe court damages or, right? Is that like, I would form an LLC maybe for a frivolous lawsuit in case. I mean, do you make anything of that, of them just filing this and forming this LLC recently?
No, I wouldn't fault anyone for doing that. I mean, it could be looked at that way, but they needed one type of unified plaintiff, right? So they did form this entity. There really wasn't, as far as I can tell, a unified existing entity. There was just a bunch of, or at least they're alleging a bunch of common law rights from different people or different entities, and so they had to unify it. But yes, that's it is another strategy. You form an LLC. And if in the event, if there is some kind of attorney's fees or, it backfires on them, then, that goes to the LLC, but there's these other theories that you can pierce through it and things like that. But I think it was just done more to make it cohesive and cleaner.
I mean, just what does your gut leave? I mean, obviously, this is just one man's opinion, right? And I don't, something could come out tomorrow and, we get more statements or whatever. But what does your gut say on this?
Well, all right.
That's what everyone wants to know.
The lawyer response everyone hates is like, it depends, right?
I want Michael's gut.
Any direction, okay? But a lot of these things end up settling. And if I were to, place some money on it, then, it'll probably end up in some kind of compromise in which Fox does carry on, and there's some kind of payment or arrangement with the plaintiffs. That's what possibly think. But what I think doesn't really matter, So let's see how it plays out, and then we can comment a little further. And it's really early on too. So let's see what the opposition looks like. Let's see what comes out in depositions and what comes out in discovery. And if it even gets to that point, it may settle tomorrow. Who knows?
Well, hopefully, let's get through this episode airing, and maybe they can settle next week. But hopefully, you'll have a recurring spot here, right? And then when we have the 30 for 30 in 20 years, and we'll make an FX TV show. We'll have a Michael Cohen on the Trademark guy.
I'll be there.
Anything else I should be asking you that I didn't before we let you go?
No. I think you hit it. I mean, it's a really interesting saga. There's a lot of colorful players involved. I'm not so sure about who's what. Maybe I can ask you a question. What's going on with the ownership of wasn't there some rumors about The Rock getting involved? And I heard some things about that. No,
well, that's the XFL. So that's our whole other world that we have. Yeah. So we have see, this is.
I'll stick to the legal stuff then.
No, we have. No, I mean, this is this whole menagerie of whatever. Yeah. So many different alternative forms right now. But yeah, no, XFL is partnering with the NFL, and it's good. This is why this is so exciting, is because Fox is pushing this year, right? We have lack of baseball, we have lack of programming. We're trying to get ahead of XFL coming back next year, right? And some would argue that maybe in the anticipation of trying to rush to market, maybe some things, could have been settled earlier with some of these things, and maybe we wouldn't have gotten it. I really think a phone call, an earnest phone call to Steve Ehrhart before all this came out might have resolved a little bit more of this than this now.
Well, who's to say that there wasn't that, and there was a lot of pushing around too, it seems like. So if you look at their pleadings, they talk about how Fox was threatening vendors, like the apparel vendors, and putting a lot of pressure on them. So they might have been just pushed in the corner where they cut off their stream of revenue. So that's another reason why maybe it came to blows at this point, or it could be used as a strategic move to get better leverage to get more of a payout. So all these things are possible. We don't know what happened behind the scenes. These are all just hypotheticals. But either way, it's interesting.
Awesome. Well, we'll check back with you later. I really appreciate your time, Michael Cohen, IP trademark lawyer. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hey guys, Reid here again. I just wanted to come back on. I wanted to say thank you so much to Ben Fischer, Michael Cohen for spending their time today. I feel like it's really good to have conversations about this. Not trying to be salacious, just trying to keep everybody informed. And, God forbid, if we could get some clicks on YouTube. In the meantime, I think we're doing okay. I do my best not to be clickbaity or too salacious, but I do think it's worthwhile to talk about. I mean, this is a real court case that is coming out in April or in March before the April kickoff. It's something to talk about. What else would we be talking about this week if it weren't for the real USFL lawsuit? The other kind of major USFL news story today that I think they would prefer us be talking about in an alternative world where this lawsuit didn't come up this week is the new sports wagering authorization that came out today. A bunch of different states across America have authorized the accepting of wagers for the new USFL. I imagine it's one of those things, a new sports league, comes into existence, or a new entity. They have to go through proper channels, right, to be authorized for different, pre-existing, DraftKings or whatever else to be, authorized to accept wagers for that. 15 states across America have authorized it as of today. Those include Iowa, New Jersey, Oregon, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia. It says those require state regulatory approval of new leagues. And then Connecticut, Delaware, Nevada, New Hampshire, New Mexico, Carolina, North Dakota, Rhode Island, South Dakota, and Wisconsin are the others. They also were talking about their newly announced, that we talked a couple weeks ago about the Sport Radar partnership, with sports data analytics, right? The partnership with the USFL. This is exciting. I mean, this is I think expected, right? A good portion of, like I said, of Fox's business plan is involved in the fantasy and sports betting. They had a quote here, from Ed Hartman talking about the game coming up. The new USFL will be an innovator in how fans watch and root for the teams they love, and we believe the ability of legal sports wagering is another way fans can deepen their engagement with our game, right? That's the same thing with the CFL. Are we making a ton of money on the bets, or is it more like getting people invested in all the games, right? If I'm a Birmingham Stallions fan, the Stars are playing. Do I care? Well, I care if I have sports betting going on, right? If I'm doing fantasy. I know Mark with NewsHub is working on that sort of stuff. So this is exciting. Like I said, I think that they would prefer us to be talking about this instead of the legal stuff. But I mean, let's be real. I think this lawsuit is a little more tantalizing for, the YouTube algorithm and thumbnail titles and things like that. So that was kind of what we led with the show today, but always exciting as well for other USFL announcements. The other bit of CFL news before we get into my interview with Richie Leone, you'll notice I'm wearing my Edmonton hat today. Edmonton had their big rebrand unveiling today of the new EE helmets, which is like the old EE helmets they had. Now they're bringing them back. They had the antlers on the sides last season as part of the Elks rebrand. It's weird, we're keeping the Elks. We're changing the Twitter handles and things. It's not at Elks anymore. It's Go Elks. I don't know if that's trying to be more consistent on the website and Instagram, right? Victor Cui, the new president and CEO, who's going to be coming on the show here in a couple weeks. I don't want to throw any shade towards the BC Lions, but if the president and CEO of Edmonton comes on before some high-ranking members in the BC Lions organization, that's going to be shots fired in my heart for where my fan base could potentially be shifting. But, we know Victor Cui came in. We're doing the big rebrand. We're rebuilding everything. We're trying to kind of remake the Edmonton Elks franchise. So this is part of it. I didn't see, a ton of media about this. I know they've been building it for a couple days. Jed Roberts, who was on the show a couple weeks ago, did the voice of the video and all of that. So that's exciting for Jed, exciting for the team. And I have my Edmonton Elks hat on today because of that. I'm going to toss it to Richie here. I'll be back at the end of the show with some plugs before we go. Thanks. Well, I'm thrilled today. We have Richie Leone. Ottawa really, making strides, on the field, off the field in the offseason. I said I wanted to get more REDBLACKS representation on the podcast. I polled our listeners, and you were the number one name that they wanted to have come on. So thank you very much, Richie, for coming on the show.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me. You guys got some good stuff you guys put out, and I'm always happy to join anytime. Yeah,
this is good. So we were talking, so you are in Ottawa now. You spent your first winter in Canada. How is the off season going for you?
It's been good. It's nice to get back to kind of a normal swing of things as far as, we had the 2019 season, then we went into COVID, didn't have a season. So it's nice to have a regular off season in terms of just getting back to getting ready to play in 6 months, or I guess now it's less, but at the end of the season, it was, about 6 months. And Ottawa was great. My first winter in Canada, learned a lot. I've been cold a lot. I'm pale a lot. So it's been a good experience so far, and I'm glad to stick around in this city that's been kind of my home away from home.
Yeah, what is it like, playing in Ottawa? I know there was, it wasn't the best season last year, right? But now it really feels like, we got Sean Burke in there now. We're doing the behind the R, right? We're getting all this excitement going. What is it like being part of the Ottawa franchise?
It's good. We've had some good years. I've been here. I've had some not so good years, but the whole setup that we have, and if you haven't been out there for a game, it's fantastic. The organization's first class. And obviously a lot of excitement going on as far as, getting new guys in the building. We got a semi-new coaching staff. It'll be year 2, so everybody will be a little more familiar with them. And a lot of excitement, going into a season, anytime a new season rolls around, optimism is always high, excitement's always high, expectations are always high. So we'll see what we got once we roll the dice. I guess first week in Winnipeg, which will be a great opportunity for us to go slay the dragon per se.
Yeah, and besides Ottawa, I don't have an Ottawa hat. I have my BC Lions. You were also part of America's franchise for a short time as well. Have spent a lot of time in the CFL. Do you enjoy, playing in the league in that way? I mean, it's certainly different, right? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I think coming into the league and kind of where we're at now, it's changed a lot as far as I feel like when I came in 2015, there was the league was a lot different. You know, I think like older players, you're kind of the guys they're gone now. I was thinking about it last night, like Travis Lulay, even like guys like Mike Riley, Ricky Ray, kind of like those old heads per se. Now it's kind of a younger generation, and it's really exciting. And we got some really, really good, exciting people to follow within the CFL. The CFL is great. It's a smaller league, but it's a lot of fun. And I've been a part of it for a couple of years. And just every chance you get to go play in a city like Vancouver or Calgary or Winnipeg, Sask, they got their local flavor. It's fantastic. It's a good opportunity. It's a great league. Obviously with, these competition leagues per se coming up, it'll be, I guess, a little bit more difficult to attract, guys to come up here. It might be. It's gonna be on the CFL to be able to hopefully usher in new young talent because that's so important, right?
Do you have thoughts on that? Do you have thoughts on these rogue upstart leagues starting in the States?
Well, I have a question for you, actually. Let me ask you this. In the scope of leagues, what's your number one? What's your number two? I mean, I see you have a lot of USFL, XFL stuff, CFL. Where do they rank? What's your favorite?
I very much enjoy covering the CFL, talking about the CFL. It doesn't move the numbers as much as I think fans of the CFL would like to think that it does, right? I mean, we were in the height of the CFL season this year when there wasn't any XFL going on, there wasn't any USFL going on, and in listenership and viewership was really down, right? And you would think, man, we're like week 6, 7, 8 CFL season. So I like it, right? Obviously, we went to Hamilton, did the Grey Cup, did the whole, that show was a good viewership for us, but it just doesn't carry that salaciousness of now the USFL is suing itself or what's going on with the XFL. It just doesn't carry that same clicks on YouTube. But as a game, I mean, I think, you can't go back against this legacy. I would rather cover anything that's actually playing football than, talking in the courtrooms or whatever.
Yeah, there is something really special about the league. There's a special feel to it. And I think I consider myself to officially be one of the older guys now, which is weird for me to say because I've been around a little bit longer. And just like I was talking about earlier, kind of the nostalgia with the CFL is really, really high. People talk about the glory days, this and that. I feel like I kind of came in at a certain time, and we're at a completely different time now. But I'm glad to still be a part of it and get the opportunity to play. I mean, I've always held it in high regard, and just the opportunity that I got, Wally gave me an opportunity, and he taught me a lot about football, a lot about life. The CFL is filled with a bunch of just really great people. As far as coaches, front office people, whatever, everybody from the top down in different organizations, you have an opportunity to meet, or I've always tried to. And guys like Wally, Coach Dice, now Lapo, Rick Campbell, guys like this, just these awesome coaches at you, and even our GMs and Neil out west, Ryan McMaden, and Marcel and Sean. It's cool to kind of see what everybody has to offer, bring to the table, how they like to run things, and as an old head, I want to bring along the younger guys too.
You're still younger than my brother, so I wouldn't say that you are an old head. You are still no. Neil McAvoy was just on our show a couple weeks ago. That was exciting. It's weird, and even when we went up, the reporters, a lot of the staff, it's the best staff in the world, right? That's involved in the CFL. I mean that, right? From the the people calling the games, right, and the people at TSN, and the people that write about the league, right, and cover it.
It's use a little bit of a switch up on the TSN panel. I'm not going to say any names, but I think we could use some other people on there. I mean, I love them individually, like Dunnigan, Barker, and Milt, of course, Kate Burness. I mean, they're all great. I think we could add a little bit more, I
think they could utilize it more. I think it's odd to bring in that much talent for 2 minutes and then we're back to the game. You know what I mean? Like they just, I think the TSN window, right, is so short for like, well, we're giving the CFL, 3 hours exactly or whatever. And so they're like, hey, let's talk at the panel. And I think you have a lot of knowledge there that I don't think, I think could benefit from like extended pre and post show. We tried to do a little bit of that last year with like live. I'd like to do more of that this year with, live call-in shows and stuff before the games. Cause I think that I just think the window is too short in the broadcast there. Right. I mean, you get a little bit at halftime, but you don't get a lot of use out of that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm with you.
Well, so talk about, staying in Ottawa, right? Sean Burke coming in, all this excitement going, coming off of last season, right? And it was a little rocky. How do you motivate and get excited for this season?
Well, one thing is, you always want to improve on, the next year. One thing that I brought to college even was each year you got to show improvement. So in my personal game, there's some things you go back to the drawing board. What did I do well? What did I do not so well? And I'd say I had a pretty solid season last year as far as numbers go and all that. So you kind of look inward first, and then you start getting excited about the possibilities and the expectations that, when we come to training camp, what kind of team we're going to kind of mold into. And I certainly think like with our coaching staff, we got Coach Lapo, we got Benavidez on the defensive side, Coach Dice, who me and Lewis, our kicker, LP Barasa, and Coach Dice, we talk all off season. We have some good banter throughout the year, and we have high expectations as a group. And the only thing we can really do is kind of worry about ourselves right now, and then come ready for camp.
I think our show, we have a special kinship with special teams, right? For a lot, I think, even from the beginning, we've talked with a lot of, the special teams guys in the spring league and in the arena leagues even, right? And it's a weird thing where like, you get slighted sometimes, right? It's a little whatever, but then it ends up being
territory. Yeah.
I mean, how do you, ride that out, right? I feel like special teams, you kind of see everything, right? You're really able to be there and so integral to it all. But it is interesting that is who we get more often than not is the punters and kickers of the world. But what do you make of your slot in life there?
Yeah, it kind of comes with the territory. I'm a football fan in general. You talk to people who may play pro football or involved in football. Maybe they don't like football that much. Me, myself, I love watching practice, seeing guys compete, seeing talking to guys, see what makes them tick, what makes them want to be successful. So I'm a student of the game in a sense. So I really get excited about watching practice, if you will, and seeing how the team's kind of coming together or whatever comes with that. So it kind of comes with the territory. I can't practice all day and hit 100 punts a day. My leg would fall off. So what do you want me to do at practice? People always say we don't do that much in practice. Well, kind of comes with the territory.
Well, it's more confidence and just, it's that like steady emotional state, right? I mean, you just have to be able to go in there more than anything, where you have just, a couple slots where you got to come in and make the difference. It's different than when you're playing, 80 snaps or I don't know, whatever the numbers are, it's a little different.
And, it's one of those things too, like you said, I mean, special teams it's a third of the game, and it can have a significant impact in a game. Sometimes it can kind of go with hidden yardage, whether it be field position or coverage, things like that. And it takes a full unit, I'm just a piece of the puzzle as far as punting the ball to a location. Those guys that cover, just as important to have a good scheme for how they do punt returns and all that. So it's cool to be a part of special teams. Also because, offense and defense is so like black and white, right? They're separate. Whereas special teams, you take guys from offense and defense and a specialist, a kicker or a punter, and you put them out there for a common goal, one shot, one kill. It's exciting. I take a lot of pride in it.
Well, and I mean, to talk about the NFL here for a second, I mean, that, special teams was a difference. Green Bay could have been, Aaron Rodgers could be a 2-time Super Bowl champion right now if Green Bay knew how to play special teams, right, against San Francisco. So, I mean, it's one of those things where it doesn't get all the, the attention, but it is a third of the game, and it's certainly paramount to being a successful franchise,
Mm-hmm. No doubt about it.
Playing in Ottawa, living in Ottawa, we've talked with a lot of guys from different teams, Jake Mayer, Calgary, right? Really high on being a part of the city, right? Being a part of the community. That's why I chose to stay in Calgary. What do you make of living in Ottawa, being a part of the team there?
Yeah. It's something that I've wanted to do, is stick around for the whole year. Like you said, being a part of a community. Guys who come up and be a part of the community on the team, we have an opportunity to now stay. If you want to work, the CFLPA has done a thing where we can have an open work permit for a guy like me, an American who wants to stay. I want to invest in the community. I want to stay year round. And certainly the first class that our ownership and GM and president bring to Ottawa is a part of why guys want to stay there. I've been on the team. This will be my 5th year? I don't know. Whatever. 4 or 5, whatever. And so, yeah, even staying for the winter, that's not an easy task. It's also expensive, which I found. You got to get winter tires. You got to get a jacket. I didn't really have a real jacket. I bought ice skates, all the cold material. Yeah, the snow tire. It all adds up. It's expensive being Canadian.
The ice skates. That's interesting.
Yeah, but to go back to it, OSEG does a lot in the community, Ottawa Sports Entertainment. They do a lot in the community. I always try to say yes to anything they have, any opportunity to be able to give back, to get into the community, meet some people. And now that I've been around for a couple of years and now staying for a winter, I hope it makes me a little bit more of a friendly face in the community.
Well, it's interesting. We had Dave Naylor on last week talking a lot about this new USFL ride and players, and oh my God, we're gonna stop players from going to Canada, right? Because they're gonna play in Birmingham or whatever. And Dave made an interesting point, and it's interesting talking with all the players we have in the CFL. Like, people choose to go to the CFL and be a part of the teams, like to build franchises, to build communities, right? To be a part of something where maybe I'm going to go, I just want to make some cash and get some tape. Like, I'll go to the USFL, right? Or I want to play right now. But people that are choosing to go, it is being a part of something bigger, right? And I do think that that's interesting that you get that buy-in in a good way from a lot of the players that go north.
Yeah, it's a good point. Now, it depends on where you're at in your career too. Like, think about a guy who maybe got an NFL tryout, was in training camp. They're sitting at home. They're like, this USFL thing comes up. It's appealing because of that. You get some tape, be done pretty soon, rather than Canada is a long-term a better play because you can make a great career up here. You can be a part of something. There's a lot of history, and I love that part about the CFL. But guys think differently than I do. So it presents a struggle maybe down the line that we might have some time to be able to finagle a way to continue to get those guys up here. I think the message of the CFL and what the CFL brings to people's lives, like myself, for example, it needs to be shared more to guys that are coming out of college because not everybody's going to make it in the NFL their first time around. And then the Canadian Football League offers a great opportunity for you to get film. It's a 2-year commitment. You get to grow as a person. Maybe you might stay. I think that's something that we got to figure out a way to still attract those young guys to come up here.
Well, this has been great. I really appreciate you coming on. Like I said, we're building inroads into Ottawa amongst any other teams. Plans for you getting ready for the season here. What else are you doing in the off season besides practicing? Right? We have skates. What else is going on as you prepare for the season? Before I let you go,
yeah, goal number 1 is to stay out of trouble. Yeah, I got a couple trips coming up. I'm going to head down south to hang out with some of the boys to my usual punting and kicking group in Atlanta and Birmingham. Ty?
No.
Ty Long, he played in BC also. He's with the Chargers now. We went to the same high school, so we get together and punt before the season goes. And right now, I can't really get on a football field. I could get into a dome, but punting in a dome is, it usually not high enough. Yeah. So get down there, maybe get tan for a little bit, and just looking forward to an exciting year.
Well, this sounds good. You've been a delight. I really appreciate you taking the time today, and I'm excited for the season. I feel like I like the offseason the best because everybody looks great, right? And everybody's making the best move. So it really is the best time to be a football fan.
Yeah, a lot of optimism. Everything looks good on paper.
There you go. Thanks again.
Yeah, cheers.
All right, everybody. Thanks again for checking out the show today. I really hope you enjoyed the USFL coverage, CFL stuff, a little XFL talk in there as well with Ben. Hopefully we have that XFL. It's like I've called it before. It's like the XFL news doomsday clock, right? When is that going to hit? We had thought maybe this week with combines and agents and everything being around. We'll see. It'll be interesting to see. In the meantime, as I said at the top of the show, I'm in on USFL. I want all of this to be a success. I have lots of friends, of players in the league, right? Why would I not want this to exist to talk about? I really understand. A final reminder and plug, please like and subscribe. We have our big Birmingham live show coming up in April. That's going to be exciting. I'm continuing to add guests to the guest list for that. So that should be fun. And as always, please like and share, tweet the video out, retweet it. A lot of work goes into this. A lot of, Thursday spent putting this all together, coordinating everybody. I should have some more good interviews coming up next week. We'll get some more CFL talk in there, and then obviously whatever else the news Santa that is the USFL. What will they bring in the bag? What packages will we have to uncover? It should be fun. Thanks as always, guys. Take care.